If you're listening to this late at night, alone, I need you to understand something before I start. I'm not telling this for entertainment. I'm telling it because I don't know how much time I have left. And because whatever is happening to me doesn't feel contained anymore. I was paid to watch a camera feed that wasn't live. That sentence still doesn't make sense to me, even now. Even after everything that followed. I didn't know it at the time. That's the part that keeps replaying in my head. The fact that if someone had just said it plainly, if I'd understood what I was agreeing to, I would have walked away. I would have gone home. I would have never let it into my life. But I didn't know. I thought it was a boring overnight security job. One of those gigs you take when rent is due, and you don't ask too many questions. Sit in a room, watch a monitor, log anything unusual, collect a paycheck. I'd done similar work before. Parking structures, office buildings after hours. Nothing exciting ever happens. That's the point. This one paid more. Too much more, honestly. Cash, weekly, no taxes, no paperwork beyond an NDA that was written so vaguely it might as well have been meaningless. I remember laughing about that with the guy who hired me. I asked him what they were hiding. He didn't laugh back. What I'm about to tell you isn't a story I came up with. It's not a metaphor. It's not a creepypasta. I'm not trying to scare you for clicks. I'm telling you because I made a mistake, and because I think whatever I saw through that camera saw me too. I don't think it started when I noticed the timestamps were wrong. I think it started when I stopped believing my own eyes. There's a reason I'm recording this instead of writing it down. There's a reason I keep checking the corners of the room while I talk. And there's a reason I unplugged every camera in my apartment before I started. If you ever get offered money to watch something you're not allowed to understand, don't. The job was in a low-rise office building on the edge of an industrial park outside Phoenix. The kind of place that looks abandoned even when it's not. Beige concrete, dark windows, a sun-bleached sign out front with a company name that didn't mean anything to me. Inside it smelled like dust and old carpet. The lobby lights were on but dimmed, like someone had intentionally set them just low enough to feel wrong. No receptionist, no security desk, just a badge scanner on the door and a printed sign taped crookedly to the wall that said, Monitoring Room B. The guy who hired me met me there the first night. Mid-40s, clean clothes, no visible tattoos, no uniform. He shook my hand, looked me straight in the eye, and asked if I was comfortable working alone. I said yes. He walked me down a hallway that felt longer than it should have been. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, some flickering, some not. We passed closed doors with labels like storage, archive, IT, but none of them had windows. Every handle was scuffed like they were used often. Monitoring room B was at the very end. Inside there was a desk, a chair, a desktop computer, and a single monitor mounted to the wall. No keyboard for the wall monitor, no mouse, just the screen. The desktop computer was old, but functional. It had a text document open titled, Log. Just write down anything unusual, the man said. Time, description, be specific. I asked him what I was monitoring. He hesitated, just for a second. An off-site location, he said. Camera feed is one way, no audio. I asked where the bathroom was. He showed me. He told me my shift was midnight to 8. He told me not to leave the room unless necessary. He told me someone would relieve me in the morning. Before he left, I asked him one more thing. What happens if the feed goes down? He looked back at the monitor. It won't. The screen showed a small room, concrete walls, one overhead light, a metal table bolted to the floor, a door on the far wall, no windows, no people. The timestamp in the corner read 2:14:33. I checked my phone. 12:07 a.m. I assumed the feed was delayed. Maybe pre-recorded footage looped for calibration. That wasn't my problem. I opened the log file and typed the date, my name, and shift start, no activity. For the first 2 hours, nothing happened. The room on the screen didn't change. The light didn't flicker. The door stayed closed. The timestamp kept moving forward second by second like a live feed would. At 1:58 a.m., I noticed the timestamp jumped backward by 3 minutes. I stared at it, waiting for it to correct itself. It didn't. I wrote it down. At 2:11 a.m., the overhead light in the room dimmed slightly, like a power fluctuation. I wrote that down too. I told myself it was a technical issue. Old equipment, bad connection, nothing supernatural, nothing worth worrying about. That was the first night. The second night, the room was the same. The third night, there was a chair that hadn't been there before. The chair appeared between frames. I know how that sounds, but that's exactly what happened. 1 second the room was empty, except for the table. The next, there was a metal folding chair, tucked halfway under it. No movement, no sound, just there. I leaned closer to the screen, my face inches from the glass. I checked the timestamp. It hadn't skipped. The seconds were counting normally. I checked the log. There was no entry about a chair. No mention of anyone entering or leaving. I stood up and walked to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, told myself I was tired. When I came back, the chair was gone. I didn't write it down that time. I wish I had. Over the next week, things started changing more often. Subtle stuff. The table would be shifted an inch to the left. The door would be slightly ajar, then closed again an hour later. Shadows that didn't line up with the overhead light. The worst part was that nothing ever moved while I was watching. It was always different when I looked back. I started checking the log more carefully. The day shift never mentioned any of it. Their entries were short, boring. Feed stable. I asked the man who hired me about it when I ran into him one morning. He told me, if it's not consistent, don't worry about it. I didn't like the way he said consistent. By the second month, I wasn't sleeping much. I'd lie in bed during the day, staring at the ceiling, replaying the feed in my head. I started dreaming about that room, about standing inside it, looking up at the camera. One night, 3:17 a.m., the door opened, slowly, inward. No one came through. The room stayed empty. The door stayed open. The timestamp kept counting. I felt my chest tighten. I remember gripping the edge of the desk so hard my fingers hurt. I waited for something to happen. Anything. Nothing did. At 3:42 a.m., the door closed. I logged it. Detailed. Exact times. I saved the file twice. The next night when I opened the log, that entry was gone. Not edited. Just never there. That was the night I realized I wasn't just watching something wrong. I was watching something that didn't want to be recorded. And that's when I noticed something else. The camera angle was slightly lower than it had been before, as if someone had adjusted it, as if someone had been standing closer to it. Before I go any further, if you're listening to this and you haven't already, subscribe to Nightmare Crypt. Not for me, but because stories like this don't stay buried, and you should know when the next one surfaces. I didn't finish that shift. At 4:06 a.m., the feed froze. Not static, just frozen on the empty room. And then without warning, the image changed. It wasn't the room anymore. It was my apartment. It was my apartment from a high corner angle, like the camera was mounted where the ceiling met the wall. I recognized everything instantly. The couch with the torn armrest. The lamp I never used because it flickered. The stack of mail on the counter I kept meaning to go through. Even the scuff mark on the floor near the bedroom door where I dragged a chair months ago. The timestamp kept running. I checked my phone with shaking hands. 4:06 a.m. I was supposed to be at work. I was at work. I stood up so fast the chair screeched across the floor. I looked around monitoring room B like I expected to see another camera pointed at me. There wasn't one. Just the wall monitor and the desktop. The lamp in my apartment flickered on the screen twice, exactly the way it always did when the power surged in my building. I whispered no, without meaning to. The bedroom door in the feed was closed. That was wrong. I never closed it all the way. It stuck unless you forced it. On the screen it opened, slowly, inward. I backed away from the monitor until my shoulders hit the wall. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I kept telling myself it was a prank, some kind of test. Hidden cameras, a looped recording, anything that didn't involve what my body already knew was true. Something moved inside my bedroom. Not fast, not dramatic, just a shift of shadow, like someone stepping aside. I felt dizzy. I crouched down, hands on my knees, breathing too hard. When I looked back up at the monitor, the bedroom door was still open. The shadow was closer to the doorway now. I don't remember deciding to leave. I just remember grabbing my jacket, yanking the door open, and running down the hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. One of them popped as I passed underneath, showering sparks. I didn't stop until I was outside, gasping for air in the parking lot. I drove home like I was being chased. When I got there, the building looked normal. Too normal. Lights on in a few windows, a car pulling out of the lot, someone smoking on a balcony down the hall. I stood in my apartment doorway for a long time before going in. Everything was exactly where it should have been. The bedroom door was open. Nothing was missing. Nothing was out of place. No signs of forced entry. I didn't sleep. The next night, I didn't go back to the job. They didn't call. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. The camera followed me after that. I noticed it first in reflections, dark circles and mirrors that vanished when I looked straight at them. Glimpses of corners that didn't make sense spatially. Angles that felt wrong. Then the dreams changed. I stopped dreaming about the room. I started dreaming from it. I'd wake up with the sense that I'd been standing still for hours, watching. My legs would ache like I hadn't moved. My eyes would burn. Sometimes I'd wake up with the taste of metal in my mouth, like I'd been holding something between my teeth. I quit my day job. I stopped answering texts. I unplugged my laptop camera, taped over my phone lens, covered mirrors with towels. It didn't matter. One night, while brushing my teeth, I noticed something behind me in the mirror, a rectangle of darkness, hovering just above my shoulder. I turned. Nothing. When I looked back at the mirror, it was closer. That was the first moment of pure panic, the kind that shuts down rational thought. I dropped the toothbrush, stumbled backward, slipped on the tile, cracked my elbow hard enough to bruise for weeks. The rectangle didn't move. It didn't have to. I understood then that it wasn't watching me. I was being framed. The paralyzing dread came later, when I realized the camera angles were improving, getting better, centered, like something was learning where to stand. I tried to leave town, packed a bag, drove north until the sun came up. At a gas station outside Flagstaff, I went into the bathroom and froze. There was a camera in the corner of the ceiling, not connected to anything, pointed directly at the stall. That's when I understood I wasn't in control anymore. Not of where I went, not of what I saw, not of what it showed me. The climax didn't happen all at once. It happened when I finally broke and went back to the building. Monitoring room B was unlocked. The monitor was on. The feed showed the small concrete room again, except this time, there was a person standing inside it. Me. I was on the screen, standing in the center of the room, staring up at the camera. My face looked wrong, too still, eyes unblinking. My mouth opened slightly, like I was about to speak. Behind me, the door began to open. I screamed. I don't remember falling, but I remember waking up on the floor with my throat raw and my ears ringing. The feed was gone. The monitor was black. I never went back. Now the cameras don't need walls. They don't need wires. Sometimes I catch myself standing still for long stretches, staring at nothing, feeling that familiar pressure behind my eyes. That's why I'm telling this now. If you ever see a camera that doesn't belong, if you ever notice time behaving strangely, if you ever feel like a room is learning how to look at you, don't assume it's broken. It might just be waiting for you to stand in the right place. I thought it was over when the screen went black. That's the lie I keep catching myself telling. What actually stopped was my ability to pretend I didn't understand what had happened. I didn't sleep for 3 days after that. I sat on my couch with every light on, blinds open, television blaring a daytime talk show at full volume, like noise could pin reality in place. Every few minutes I'd glance at the corners of the room, not because I saw anything there, but because I felt the possibility of something being there. That's what it does to you. It doesn't show itself. It convinces you to do the work for it. On the fourth night, I finally passed out sitting upright. I woke up just before dawn with my neck stiff and my mouth dry, heart racing for no reason I could identify. The TV was off. I knew I hadn't turned it off. The silence felt staged, like it had been waiting for me to notice. I stood up slowly, listening. The building was quiet in that early morning way. No footsteps above me, no pipes knocking, no distant sirens. I walked into the bathroom and splashed water on my face, avoiding the mirror until I had to look. My reflection was normal, too normal. No bags under my eyes, no redness, no exhaustion. I looked rested in a way that didn't match how my body felt. My skin looked smoothed over, like a bad photo filter. Behind me, the shower curtain shifted. I spun around. Nothing. I yanked it open anyway. Empty tub. Dry. Clean. I stood there, breathing hard, hands gripping the curtain rod, and that's when I heard it. A faint clicking sound. Not mechanical, not rhythmic. More like someone tapping a fingernail against plastic, thinking. It was coming from the living room. I didn't go investigate. I grabbed my keys and left barefoot, locking the door behind me, without even checking if my hands were shaking. They were. I spent the day walking, miles. I crossed neighborhoods I'd never been in before, sat in coffee shops without ordering anything, stood in public bathrooms, staring at ceiling corners like a lunatic. No cameras, no black rectangles, nothing obvious. By evening, I started to think maybe the pressure had cracked something in my head. That maybe the job, the isolation, the sleep deprivation had finally lined up just right. I went home. That was the second mistake. The first was ever sitting down in monitoring room B. The apartment felt different the second I stepped inside. The air was cooler. Not colder, just wrong, like the AC had been running without me knowing. I set my keys down and froze. They made no sound. I picked them up and dropped them again. Same thing. No clatter, no jingle. I held my breath. In the silence I heard it again, that soft clicking, closer now, from above me. I backed into the center of the room without thinking, heart hammering so hard it hurt. My eyes tracked the ceiling, every seam, every vent, every shadow. Nothing moved. Then the clicking stopped, and something else replaced it. Breathing, not mine, right behind my left ear. I don't remember screaming, but my throat burned afterward. I ran. I don't remember opening the door. Don't remember the hallway. Don't remember the stairs. I remember hitting the sidewalk and falling hard, palms scraping open. And I remember looking up at my building. Every window was dark, except mine. In my living room window, a faint glow pulsed. Soft, steady, like a monitor. That's when the panic fully took me. The kind that strips you down to instinct. I didn't go back inside. I slept in my car. I drove until the sun came up and parked behind a grocery store. Curled in the back seat, hands over my ears. Like that could stop it. The dreams came anyway. This time I wasn't standing in the room. I was sitting, in the chair, facing the monitor. I could feel my body slumped, my spine curved wrong, my jaw slack. I couldn't move, but I could see the screen clearly. It showed places I recognized. My car, the grocery store parking lot, the exact angle of the street light above me. The feed zoomed in slowly until the frame filled with my sleeping face. On the screen, something leaned into view beside me. I woke up choking on air, biting my tongue so hard I tasted blood. That was when I realized the cameras weren't following me. They were ahead of me. Predicting. Staging. I stopped trying to run after that. Running assumes there's a direction where the thing isn't. I started trying to stay visible instead. Busy places, bright lights, crowds. I figured it wouldn't show itself if there were witnesses. I was wrong. It doesn't care about witnesses. It uses them. The first time it happened in public, I was in a laundromat. I felt it before I saw it. The same pressure behind the eyes, the same sense of being framed. I looked up, heart sinking, and there it was, a security camera. Except it wasn't pointed at the entrance, or the machines, or the change dispenser. It was pointed at me, directly. No blinking red light, no wiring, just a black lens swallowing my reflection. The woman folding clothes next to me smiled and asked if I had any quarters. When she spoke, the camera tilted, just a fraction, tracking my face as I answered. That was the moment of paralyzing dread. The realization that it didn't need to hide anymore, that it could move things, influence angles, guide attention, that I was no longer the primary observer. I don't know how long I stayed there. Eventually the woman left. Eventually the camera stopped moving. I walked out with wet clothes and a trash bag and never went back. I'm telling you all of this now because I need this to exist somewhere other than my head. If you're listening to this on Nightmare Crypt, do me one favor. Subscribe and pay attention to the stories that feel too quiet, too grounded, too specific. Those are the ones that matter. Because here's the part I've been avoiding. The cameras stopped appearing last week. No corners, no reflections, no black rectangles, just absence. And that's worse. Because now, when I wake up, I sometimes find myself standing in rooms I don't remember entering. Hallways, storage units, empty offices after hours, places that feel prepared, staged. Yesterday morning, I woke up sitting in a chair I don't own, in a room with concrete walls and a single monitor mounted at eye level. The screen was off, but the camera above it wasn't. I could feel it adjusting, learning. I'm writing this now because I don't know how long before I stop waking up on this side of the screen. If you ever take a job watching something you don't understand, if you ever notice a camera pointed somewhere it has no reason to be, don't assume you're the one in control. Sometimes the feed isn't live, it's a rehearsal, and eventually, it's your turn to stand in frame.